The first time I saw her, she was nothing more than a shadow against the dim light of the street lamp. Her silhouette was unmistakable, the kind that would send a chill down your spine, not for its beauty, but for the darkness it seemed to harbor. They called her the Sculptress of Death, a moniker whispered in hushed tones, among those who dared to discuss her heinous deeds. I remember the first body. It wasn't just the sight of it, mutilated and posed with an eerie precision that made my heart skip a beat. It was the art, the macabre artistry that she left behind. The victim, a man in his 40s, was found in the park, his body twisted into the shape of an angel, wings crudely carved into his back. His eyes were open, staring into oblivion, but it was the message she left that truly haunted me. Every piece of art requires sacrifice. But who was the artist, and why this obsession with such gruesome creations? Was it revenge, a twisted expression of grief, or something far more sinister lurking in the shadows of her psyche? As I delved deeper into her trail of terror, each new scene was more disturbing than the last. There was a ballet dancer posed en pointe, her feet bound in barbed wire, a ballet of agony. Then the lawyer, his arms outstretched, nails driven through his palms, a mockery of crucifixion. Each death was a statement, a silent scream for something lost, or perhaps never found. And now, standing here at the threshold of her latest tableau, I can't shake the feeling that I'm next. Her creations are becoming more personal, more intimate. The air feels thick with dread, every rustle of leaves a potential whisper of her presence. Why does she choose me? What have I done, or not done, to draw her gaze? The chill of the early morning air bit into my skin as I stepped closer to the scene, the yellow police tape fluttering like a warning flag. The latest victim lay there, an elderly woman, her frail body contorted into a grotesque mimicry of a grieving widow at a tombstone. Her face, now a canvas of sorrow, was etched with lines that spoke of a lifetime of stories, cut short by the sculptress's ruthless hand. Every detail was deliberate, each pose a chapter in a twisted narrative. But what narrative? Was it a commentary on life's fragility or a dark exploration of human despair? I couldn't help but wonder if her victims were chosen for who they were, or for the emotions they evoked, the stories they carried. The sculptress's notes, always left at the scene, were like clues to an unfathomable puzzle. This time it read, "In the silence of death, true beauty speaks." Her words, cryptic and chilling, sent shivers down my spine. I felt as though she was speaking directly to me, challenging me to understand her art, her madness. My investigation had led me through the darkest alleys of the city, into the minds of those who had witnessed the horror firsthand. They spoke of her not as a murderer, but as a cursed artist, driven by a compulsion beyond understanding. Each account painted a picture of a woman haunted by visions, perhaps of beauty she could never achieve in life, only in death. As I pieced together the fragments of her past, I uncovered stories of a young artist, prodigious and promising, whose life took a tragic turn with the loss of her only child. The grief had transformed her, warping her perception of art and life until they were indistinguishable from one another. But now her attention seemed to have shifted. Was it an evolution of her grief, or had I unwittingly become a part of her narrative? Her presence felt like a cold breath on the back of my neck, a silent whisper urging me to look closer, to feel the depth of her despair. The realization hit me like a thunderbolt. She wasn't just creating art. She was telling her story, a story of loss, pain, and a desperate quest for something pure in the filth of human existence. And now, perhaps, she needed me to be her final piece, the one to give her story closure. I stood there, amidst the macabre tableau she had created, the tension building like the silence before a storm. The air was heavy with the unspoken, the questions unasked. Why me? What role did I play in her tragic symphony? As I turned to leave, a shadow moved in the corner of my eye, a fleeting figure that might have been her or merely a figment of my overwrought imagination. But the message was clear. This was not over, not by a long shot. The sculptress was out there, crafting her next masterpiece, and with each step I took, I knew I was moving closer to becoming her next subject. As I moved through the dimly lit streets, each shadow seemed to stretch and twist, as if trying to mimic the grotesque art I had just left behind. The realization that I was becoming a part of her twisted narrative sent a shiver down my spine, not of fear, but of an unsettling anticipation. The sculptress's art wasn't just about death, it was a brutal dissection of life's essence, an attempt to capture the fleeting moments of emotion that define us. Was she seeking redemption through her art, or was she damning us all with every stroke of her deadly brush? I found myself back at my apartment, the sanctuary feeling less safe now, the walls closing in as if they were part of her gallery. Every creak of the floorboard, every whisper of the wind against the window panes felt like her voice, a silent beckoning to understand her deeper. I sat down, pulling out my notes, the crime scene photos, the autopsy reports, and her cryptic messages. Each piece of evidence was like a brushstroke, painting a picture not just of murder, but of a soul in torment. Why did she choose these victims? What was she trying to say? The ballet dancer, poised in eternal pain, perhaps was a critique on the beauty found in suffering, an exploration of the human body's limits. The lawyer, his arms splayed in crucifixion, could symbolize justice perverted or the ultimate sacrifice for truth. And now, the elderly woman, a tribute to loss and mourning, her life's narrative brutally ended. As I stared at the photographs, the scenes replayed in my mind, more vivid with each passing moment. Her choice of medium was death, her canvas, the human body. But what was she truly painting? The sculptress's notes echoed in my head. In the silence of death, true beauty speaks. These words haunted me, pushing me to look beyond the horror, to find the art within the atrocity. Was she telling me that in death we find the purest form of expression? Or was it a twisted invitation to join her in her exploration of human limits? And I couldn't shake the feeling that she was watching, waiting, perhaps even guiding me through this macabre journey. My investigation had shifted from hunting a killer to understanding an artist. What did she want from me? Was I to be her muse, her final masterpiece, or merely another critic? With a deep breath, I decided to step into her world, to understand her narrative, not just with my mind, but with my heart. I began to see patterns, not just in her killings, but in the lives of her victims. Each one, in their own way, had stories of deep sorrow or profound joy, moments that defined their existence, now immortalized in her art. My thoughts were interrupted by a sudden, chilling draft. The window had been left open, a subtle invitation or perhaps a warning. I felt her presence, not as a specter, but as a force compelling me towards a revelation. Was I drawn into this because I had something she needed? Or was I merely a vessel for her to express what she couldn't in life? I stood, the cold air biting at my senses, and walked to the window. The city spread out below, its lights flickering like dying stars. In that moment, I understood her. Her art was not just about death. It was about capturing life's fleeting moments, moments that could only be truly understood in their absence. The realization was like a cold blade sliding through my heart. I was not just another chapter in her book. I was her conclusion, the final piece that would complete her gallery of human emotion. The tension was palpable, the silence oppressive, as if the entire world was holding its breath for my next move. And as I looked out into the dark, I knew my journey wasn't over. It was just beginning. The sculptress was out there, crafting her next piece, and with every step I took, every thought I had, I was moving closer to understanding her, closer to becoming part of her dark masterpiece. What would be my role in her symphony of sorrow? The night was young, and the city was her canvas. As I stepped out into the night, I knew one thing for certain. The next scene would be the most horrifying yet, and I was to be its protagonist. I couldn't shake the feeling that each step was drawing me closer to an abyss I might never escape. The sculptress's shadow had grown over me like a dark shroud, her presence a cold whisper against the back of my neck. I felt as if I were walking through her gallery, not as a spectator, but as part of the exhibit itself. The city was eerily quiet, the usual hum of life absent, replaced by an unsettling silence that seemed to pulse with anticipation. Every shadow cast by the streetlights stretched like the fingers of death, pulling me into the heart of her narrative. My mind raced with questions. Was I just another pawn in her grim chess game? Or was there a deeper connection? a reason she chose me. Each victim had been chosen with a precision that suggested they were not random, but part of a larger, horrific tapestry. I found myself at the old warehouse on the edge of town, a place known for its decrepit charm and dark history. The door creaked ominously as I pushed it open, the sound reverberating through the cavernous space like a warning. The air inside was thick with the stench of decay, a testament to the horrors that had transpired within these walls. My flashlight pierced the darkness, revealing the grotesque art she left behind. Here, on the concrete floor, lay the latest victim, his body posed in a tableau that was both beautiful and terrifying. His limbs were arranged as if he were reaching for the sky, or perhaps pleading for mercy. His eyes, wide with terror, seemed to follow me as I moved closer. I could feel her watching, her gaze like a physical weight on my shoulders. The note this time was different. To understand life, one must embrace death. Her words were not just a message, but a directive, a challenge to dive deeper into the psyche of madness. Why did she bring me here? Was I to witness the completion of her work, or was I to become part of it? The question gnawed at me, the tension coiling tighter with every beat of my heart. And I noticed something else on the ground, half hidden under the body, a small ornate key. A key to what? A secret, perhaps, or a final piece of this macabre puzzle? The cold draft from the night air seemed to intensify, the darkness closing in as if it too was part of her art. My breath formed clouds in front of me, each exhalation a fleeting escape from the dread that filled the room. I reached for the key, my fingers trembling not just from the chill, but from the fear of what it might unlock. As I touched it, a shiver ran through me, a visceral reminder that I was not just investigating, but participating in this dark culminatio. The key was cold in my hand, an emblem of the impending doom that awaited. I couldn't shake the feeling that every move I made was being orchestrated by her, like a puppet on strings in her twisted theater of death. I turned the key in the lock of an ancient rusted door at the back of the warehouse, the hinges groaning in protest, as if warning me against what lay beyond. As the door swung open, the smell of mold and decay hit me, a pungent reminder of the horrors I was about to unveil. The room was lit only by a dim bulb, casting long, distorted shadows that danced on the walls, a mockery of the life that once thrived here. And there she was, the sculptress, standing in the center, her back to me, her silhouette as chilling as ever. She turned slowly, her face a mask of calm, her eyes glinting with a manic fervor. "You've come," she said, her voice a whisper that seemed to echo through the void of the room. "I've been waiting for you." My heart pounded, the silence in the room broken only by the erratic rhythm of my breath. "Why me?" I managed to ask, my voice barely a whisper. She stepped closer, her gaze never leaving mine. "Because you see, don't you? You see the art within the horror. You understand the narrative I've been crafting." I felt the weight of her gaze, the weight of her madness. "I see death, not art," I protested. But my words felt hollow, swallowed by the oppressive air of the room. "You see what you choose to see," she countered, her tone now tinged with impatience. "But what of the beauty and despair? The symphony of human emotion, played out in the quiet of death." Her words sent a shiver down my spine, but there was a part of me that wanted to understand, to look beyond the grotesque. The room was filled with her creations, each body a grotesque statue, posed in scenes of suffering, each one a grotesque testament to her vision. "Look around," she commanded, her voice now filled with a strange, haunting reverence. "Each one tells a story, a moment captured in eternity. Do you not see the artistry?" My flashlight illuminated the twisted figures, their contorted forms a gallery of human pain. I wanted to run, to escape this madness, but something rooted me to the spot. "You've turned life into an exhibit of death," I said, the realization settling in with a heavy dread. She smiled, a twisted, mournful smile. "Isn't that the essence of art? To capture life at its most profound, its most raw?" Her eyes seemed to bore into mine. Conclusion now. Soul laid bare before me. "You are not just here to witness," she said, her voice now a soft, almost hypnotic hum. "You are here to become part of the masterpiece." My mind reeled, the gravity of her words sinking in. I was no longer just an observer. I was now a potential subject in her gallery of horror. The key I held felt like a death sentence, the cold metal, a stark reminder of the finality of her intent. "You are the critic, the one who can appreciate the depth of my work," she continued, her eyes alight with a fervor that chilled me to the bone. "The one who understands the narrative I've woven through flesh and bone." I stepped back, the fear palpable, my heart racing as if trying to escape my chest. "I'm not here to become part of your art," I said, my voice firm despite the tremor in my voice, firm despite the tremor in my hands. She stepped closer, her eyes narrowing, as if she could see through the very core of my being. Her lips curled into a smile that was both comforting and terrifying. "You don't get to decide that," she whispered, her voice low and enticing. "You were never just an observer. You were always part of the narrative. And now you'll understand the final piece of the puzzle." I recoiled, panic surging through me as I backed away from her. The walls of the warehouse seemed to close in on me, the shadows growing thicker, more oppressive. My mind raced, trying to find a way out, but every step felt like I was walking deeper into her trap, every exit an illusion. "You don't understand," I shouted, but my voice cracked, betraying the fear I couldn't hide. This isn't art. It's madness. It's murder." She tilted her head, considering my words as if they were part of some great debate she had already won. Art, madness, it's all the same thing. The boundaries blur when you look deep enough. You'll see. I wanted to scream, to run, but my body refused to obey. She had ensnared me in her world of horror, and there was no escape. As she closed the distance between us, I felt the cold grip of inevitability settle over me. She was right. I wasn't just a critic. I was the next canvas. In that moment, I understood. It wasn't just about death, about the twisted art she created. It was about the experience, the immersion into the very essence of human suffering. She wasn't simply capturing death. She was making others feel it, embody it. She wanted to take me to the same depths of despair that had birthed her madness. And there, in the quiet darkness of that forsaken warehouse, I realized the truth. There was no escape. I had been drawn into her masterpiece,